All right, folks, welcome back to another episode of the McKinney Podcast, celebrating what makes us unique by nature. You ready for another block, Fred?
Let's ride.
It is recording day, and man, I have a little bit of excitement, maybe more than a little bit, because the guest that we have today, and I'll just, throw it out there. We're starting off here in just a moment with Superintendent Pratt of McKinney ISD, and right after Shawn, Keith Self, Congressman from the 3rd District of Texas, is going to be sitting in that very same seat. And then this afternoon, after lunch, LQ Fields from the Sheraton Hotel. Sorry, LQ, your third billing on today.
But when the podcast drops, she'll be the only one.
She might have the biggest personality of anyone in this room today, including you and I both.
Combined.
Combined, yeah, for sure. Let's go ahead and give Shawn the intro that he deserves. If I can get this thing to start. There it is. Superintendent Pratt is a veteran of 31 years of public education, all of them right here in the great city of McKinney. During his tenure at McKinney ISD, Mr. Pratt has served as teacher, head athletic coach, director of athletics, assistant superintendent, and now superintendent, a.k.a. the man himself sitting at the top of the pyramid of McKinney ISD, responsible for all the wonderful people that serve our students. He has also earned a variety of honors and distinctions throughout his tenure at McKinney ISD, including introduction into the prestigious Texas High School Athletic Directors Hall of Honor. That's the creme de la creme of athletic directors in Texas public education. And we are also very fortunate to have him as the leader of McKinney ISD, Mr. Shawn Pratt. Thanks for coming, man.
No, thank y'all
Welcome.
for having me. You bet.
Oh, gosh. When we set out to have this podcast, and it occurred to us that we needed to build a guest list, the who's who, if you will. Episode 1, George Fuller. We've had Paul Grimes. We've had a bunch of other folks in here, and your name was on the list from the very beginning because
thank you.
This podcast isn't just a business podcast. It's not just talking about politics or city governance or whatever. We want it to be the podcast for everyone in McKinney. And we all know some of the most important people in McKinney, probably the most important people in McKinney, are our moms and our kids.
Absolutely.
And that is, would you move the microphone a little bit closer? I'm sorry. Yeah, there we go. Wanted to hear that voice. It's already better. Love it. In your role, you have one of the most important jobs in the entire city. And I think that all of our previous guests would agree, helping chart the course for public education in our city and helping direct the experiences of our teachers, our administrators, our student leaders. Man, it is an incredibly important job. So, before we get into the questions that we asked here, I would love to get your take on just reflecting on the role that you have as superintendent and the mandate, the principle that you run that job by.
Sure. Well, first of all, I don't see myself at the top of the pyramid. I really, truly see myself as part of the team. I never set out to be a superintendent. It was never in my list of goals. But I fell in love with McKinney. I fell in love with McKinney ISD. And every chance I had to maybe broaden my influence a little bit, I took it. And it just kind of happened. And when Dr. McDaniel announced his retirement and had some people ask me about it, I just, at first I was like, no, that was never part of my goal. But the more I thought about it, I felt like I owed it to the people and the teachers and the kids and the administrators and the district and the city. I mean, it's been great to me and my family. And so slowly my thought process changed a little bit, and I started kind of getting excited about it and just decided, look, if I am the person that they think is best, then I owe it to the community and the school district to jump in there and do my best.
Love it.
Okay, so just out of curiosity, I mean, so you've been actively involved in some manner or another with the school district for 3 decades.
Yes, sir.
Right. So let's set the way back machine. Is there a teacher when you were K through 12 that you could say made a difference in my life?
Oh, absolutely. So, I've got an unusual story. My mom and dad were divorced before I was born. I came into a merged family when I was about 5. Moved to Plano. I was the youngest of 8 kids. I tell the story like I grew up as the youngest of 8, drinking powdered milk, stirring it up in the water. I mean, so, and then, like some blended families, we had issues. And when I was a freshman in high school, I ran away from home, never to go back, and didn't have a lot of direction. And if it wasn't for some teachers and coaches that kept me on track and gave me extra attention, I never would have made it. I just didn't have direction back then. But I could sit here all morning and tell stories of. I had an English teacher that in middle school that took a lot of her time after school tutoring me in every subject, just knowing that I didn't have anybody there really helping me. I had Coach Pretty, my 8th grade year, told me, he said, "You're going to go to Estes Park, Colorado with FCA." And I said, "Coach, I don't have the money for that." He said, "It's taken care of. Here's what you need. Be on that bus." And in Estes Park, Colorado, I accepted Christ as my Savior. And it's and then in high school, it was the same thing. My coaches and teachers were calling me all the time, "Where you at?" And just really pushing me through that. And as I always say, they were the gap until I matured enough to realize, hey, you're in charge of your own happiness. You're in charge of your own pathway here, and kind of took over. But anyway, without those people, I don't know that I'd be here today where I'm at.
How about that? So shout out to those teachers,
Amen.
those coaches. If they're still out there, then they definitely should be tuned in to see what a difference they have made.
And we got, we have teachers and coaches doing the same thing every day. And as a young teacher, when I got here, I'd played football and I wanted to teach and coach. I had no idea that I would fall in love with the teaching part. And that part, I was one of those. I wanted to be a head football coach. I wanted to win state championships. I'd won one in high school, and I thought, I've seen how it's done. In that very first year in the classroom teaching Texas history, it then was Slaughter Middle School. I sat there, and there was kids in front of me that were me 10 years before that, 15 years before that, and very quickly realized the impact I could have and the help I could give them. And then, my why just changed immediately. And you realize what you can do for kids. And so then, I love teaching the classroom because it was a different type of kid that I got to work with, and I got to expose to more kids. And so anyway, there are teachers and coaches and band directors and just doing things like that right now, right as we speak. They're doing that right now in their classroom.
How about that?
Now, I love the career path here. It is incredibly interesting. In 2024, it is so rare to see someone spend their entire career in one organization. If you think of McKinney ISD as a corporation, you basically started in an entry-level sales role, then you got promoted to a supervisor, then a VP, then a executive vice president, and then president of the company. I'd love to hear your take on what it is about McKinney that at first was a job, and then you got promoted, and then you started with the coaching, assistant coach, then head football coach. At some point, it probably occurred to you, I might just be here forever. I'd love to hear about that. What was it about your experience in our great city that made you think, this isn't just a job. I think I might love it here. I think I might be here for my career and just keep on moving through the ranks. 20 years ago, you probably didn't even aspire to be superintendent.
I did not.
Yeah,
I didn't 2 years ago.
There you go. Talk about your experience in McKinney as a place to live and work and grow a family that romanced your soul and said, all right, this is where I'm going to be.
Yep. And you hit the nail on the head. I think the raising my family part, I fell in love with McKinney ISD, fell in love with teaching. I've always by nature been one that put your effort and energy where your feet are and not be always looking around, the grass isn't greener. But when me and my wife started our family, there's no doubt that I think that was another level of my roots growing deeper here. I raised 3 children in the city of McKinney and McKinney ISD. They had a great experience. They had great friends, great other families that we became connected with. But they went through K through 12 here and were very well prepared for school.
Yeah.
My oldest went to TCU on a full academic scholarship, was very successful, and he's doing great in the business world. And then my other 2 went to A&M. And so, they all 3 went to very challenging, hard academic situations and were prepared because of McKinney ISD and, the great teachers that they experienced throughout their K through 12 experience. So I think, to your point, I fell in love with the school district immediately. When we moved up here, started a family, I fell in love with the city, the people. It's the people. Obviously, we have a lot of great stuff at McKinney, and we're blessed, but the people here are special.
Yeah.
And just fell in love with the city, and then just as saw the opportunities that my own children were having, and that it was a great place to stay and raise our family, and that proved to be true in the end.
Love it.
Okay. So you mentioned, and we definitely love the city and love the people here in McKinney. It's the reason why, both James and I separately, we didn't confer, hey, you can move to McKinney, but that's one of those that, and we've heard that consistently from the other people we've had on the podcast. But you mentioned the people. There is a lot of growth that is absolutely just, our area is booming and exploding.
Yes, sir.
And so what do you have? What is the school district's plan moving forward, looking at the projected numbers that we're going to have here in McKinney?
Sure. And our demographer, when you hear a lot about the districts south of us on 75, and a lot of school districts' enrollments are declining. Ours have been pretty stagnant. And you hear, well, Richardson shuts some schools down, Plano, Allen. But our demographer, the difference that I tell people is the demographer's telling them your enrollment is going to decline over the next 10 years. And the demographer is telling us that our enrollment is going to increase over the next 10 years. Not at a rapid pace like we saw in the 90s, and I was here for that, and in the early 2000s, but a nice steady 11% growth over the next 10 years. And so we are looking at that and planning. And then obviously you guys know our northeast quadrant and our northwest quadrant is where the growth is going to happen.
Yep.
A lot of the neighborhoods in the south and the west are aging out. People aren't moving. They're staying here because we have such a great city, and they don't have children in the house anymore, right? So we're at some point going to have to adjust the lines and move more kids south. And we did that this last spring with some of the developing communities, Painted Tree. We moved them from the north, pushing them further south out of McKinney North into McKinney Boyd and out of some elementaries further south to adjust while we bring in. This fall we're starting a long-range facility planning committee where we bring the community in. Firm believer that the school district is the community school district, and we got to have their input. Last year we had over 200 people involved in our strategic plan. Where do we want to go over the next 3 to 5 years? And we went through what I thought was a beautiful process of bringing staff, parents, community members, students. We're all part of that 200-member group to come up with that strategic plan, and we're doing a very similar thing with our long-range facility planning. Where do we want to go with our facilities? Where do we eventually we'll talk about the zoning too, but educating them first and then getting them to be part of the decision. So, we know that as we move forward, it's not a Shawn Pratt decision, it's a community decision.
So if you don't mind me double clicking on that for just a little bit, the context that I bring to this particular question is a second grader at McClure Elementary. Jennifer Harrison was sitting in that chair at some point in the next week or two. Allison and Elizabeth are going to be doing that interview. Thought that might be more fun for just girls to get together and have a conversation. As you can imagine, my wife is a lot more plugged into the daily happenings at McClure. When I was asking Jennifer about her perspective on things, just at the principal level, knowing full well that we're going to have her boss's boss sitting in that chair, what are you guys planning as far as redrawing the lines in more of a near term? Because specifically McClure added more than 100 students this school year versus last school year. And we look at comparison across the 22 elementary schools. McClure is the second highest population of all the elementary schools. And I look at Wilmouth Elementary, which is barely 2 miles away to the west, and they have, I don't know exactly what the population is, but at least a couple hundred students less than McClure. But geographically, pretty dang close to each other.
Right.
And that puts a lot of burden on teachers and administrators with increased class sizes and all the things that go along with that. What is the strategic plan, the bigger picture beyond just one elementary school? Because obviously there's a whole bunch of pieces on the chessboard.
Right.
How do you guys make those more small and medium term decisions rather than having a commission and a 5 and 10 year plan and whatnot?
Yeah, and it's not a 5 or 10 year plan. That group will be more of a 2-year plan.
Cool. Okay.
It's not a 5 or 10 years. So we,
Great.
More of like a 2-year. But
that's good to know.
Yes, absolutely, and know too that the class sizes aren't bigger because we adjust personnel, and unfortunately, it's even a week into school, sometimes we're saying, hey, you're the last teacher in. I know we just hired you for this elementary, but the numbers demand that we're going to have to pull you and put you over here into McClure or wherever it be. So we anticipated the numbers at McClure based on some changes we made.
Yep.
And so right now it's kind of, and we tried to focus on the communities that were just being developed.
Like Paint the Tree, for instance.
Exactly. To minimize, if we're going to take kids that are already established in a neighborhood going to an elementary, and we've had a long history here of neighborhood elementaries, right? That changes here when you get to middle school and high school. We start taking economic status into play and trying to balance things out secondary. But anyway, so before we take those kids that are established in schools, that needs to be a community decision. There needs to be a lot more people, and the parents in that community need to have representatives that have a say and go through a process. So we've kind of been making adjustments where somebody's moving into McKinney, they're not established in a school, we're moving you here to minimize the effect on families. Change.
A little bit of an ignorant question here. Are you guys planning on any new campuses to support Painted Tree, kind of like Prosper ISD did with the Auburn Hills subdivision?
So that's part of what this long-range facility planning committee will have to help us decide. I don't think there's any doubt that up in that northern quadrant, and then if you look at that, it's interesting, you look at the northeast quadrant up there in New Hope. Right now, those students are bused to Webb Elementary. And that's a good distance.
Yeah, it is.
And so we've got to look at putting something up in that quadrant also. The northwest quadrant up near Fraser, we've already had to adjust that where the new houses will go. But it's going to definitely the population in that area, unless we're going to bus kids, 30 minutes to their elementary, we're going to have to look at doing something there, and then eventually a middle school too.
Yeah, for sure. Is it 4 middle schools? Is that right?
Right now we got 5.
5. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, my kids aren't old enough for me to pay close attention to the middle schools.
I get it.
Yeah, I knew the elementary school statistics.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah. We've got 21 elementaries, 5 middle, and 3 high.
Oh, I was one off. Dang it, Fred. I prepped incorrectly.
For 22?
Yes, sir.
So if you throw loss in early childhood in there,
that's what it was.
22.
Yeah, I can thank Jennifer Harrison for that 22.
There you
number.
go.
She fed me that one.
And technically, probably it is 22 with our early childhood center.
Early childhood center.
Yes, sir.
All right, so you bring up a point about new campuses and so forth. McKinney has a gym tucked away inside one of the high schools. It's Serenity High.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And so I've heard story after story, just, amazing testimonies of what's happening there. Do you, of course, this is unofficial, because as you already said, we're not trying to make the Pratt school district, whatever, it's for the people. Do you ever see that becoming a standalone facility?
Maybe not in today's financial times. That would be costly for us to do that. And we had the space at McKinney North. And obviously we put things in place where they kind of are their own facility there. They're isolated, where they can come and just interact with each other. And so we both the entrance and the exit, we worked on that. And so I think one day, yes, but we would have to be in different economic times in terms of funding for public education before we could do that.
Well, I mean, I'm sure everything is a one-day thing because, there's always the reality of the finances.
Absolutely.
But, the vision going forward. And speaking of vision, I've had the opportunity to be in attendance at the McKinney new teacher hire breakfast. That's hire as like, they're hired, not like hire. The first time someone told me that, I was like, why are they hire? It's like, oh, it's the new hires, the new people on the job. And, I just have to say that everywhere that you were, that whole day, you must have gone home hoarse because you were talking with everybody was coming up to you, and you spent so much time with everybody. But pretty much the way that you started off with that, you're not here trying to be the top of the pyramid, but that you're just out there just challenging those teachers. And so I don't know if every single new hire was there, but what would you say to those other teachers that I know a lot of people just take a job because they need that job. But you obviously have already testified about the teachers that cared, and for yourself they cared. What would you say? Why do teachers need to look at becoming part of the McKinney ISD if they're not already?
Sure, great question. It's and that morning is very important. They're new to McKinney ISD, right? And we truly have a family feel, just like this city does, and we want them to feel that. But a large percentage of those new hires are brand new to the profession, and the profession's hard, and teaching has become so. I joked with a guy. We've got a teacher at McKinney Boyd. He retired from the auto industry, and at 56 he came in and started teaching history. And I bumped into him the other day, and I was having a conversation. He teaches what I taught back in the day, and I was, we were just talking about U.S. history, but he was talking about, I didn't prepare for the administrative piece of it. And I said, I get it. I said, in 1993, when I walked into a classroom, I literally got to walk in there and just teach. And then over the years, the mandates and the things, there's so much red tape and paperwork and administrative side of it. And I said, but that's our job to help you manage that and to make sure that you're able to focus as much as possible on the actual teaching with the kids, right? The interactions. But back to my point is making sure those brand new teachers coming in feel 100% supported. And it's like anything. Each one of them kind of have their own area that they feel really supported in, but I'm still not sure about this, right? And making sure that they have the resource and knowing where the resource is inside McKinney ISD. I do think we do a great job with our new teachers, supporting them and helping them be successful. And you have to. I mean, we want to be because that's who we are. But also, teachers are leaving at a higher percentage rate than just even back in 2020. I just read an article the other day, and in 2020 there was 58% of teachers in Texas looking to leave the profession, and today it's in the mid 80s. Wow. And there's a lot of reasons for that. I think one of it is politics have been pulled down into local public education, but teachers have never been paid what they should be paid.
Sure.
But in the past, teachers were held at such a high regard, and now if they go home and watch the news, they start questioning is this profession held at a high regard? And I think in this community, I know in this community, the large majority of our community still holds teachers at a very high regard.
Yep.
But they're hearing all the noise, they're seeing the news, they're hearing all the things, and it's making them feel like a target. So my point is we've got to do everything we can as a school district to make sure, new to McKinney or new to the profession or both, that we are pouring into them and that we're giving them every resource they need to be successful.
Excellent. Excellent. Love it.
No,
I'm sorry, just quick story. That morning, I don't know if you heard Mayor Fuller speak.
Oh, yeah. Well, I was aghast when he walked in and had
Yeah. So he calls me at 7 a.m. and he's like, "Hey man, I got on a bike wreck yesterday and I broke my ribs and I got a concussion and all this." And I said, "Hey, no worries, George. I get it. We'll cover for you and I'll tell him what happened because I know you like it." And he goes, "Oh no, I'm coming. I'm just telling you, I'm beat up when I get there." And I'm like, "Okay." And sure enough, he showed up and
the purple and black and blue.
Exactly.
I was across. I was at the very back of the auditorium with my larger lens, and when he stepped up, and as soon as he came into focus, I was like, he got mugged.
Yeah,
he got mugged. It looked so bad.
He got mugged by the pavement.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
No, I wanted to take a moment and say, in reflection on what you just said there, Shawn, as far as this podcast is concerned, the foundation of our city are our educators, our first responders, and our public servants. The people that volunteer their time. Staff, nothing against staff. I think staff is probably fourth on the list. If you're a professional, paid employee of the city of McKinney, you're up there. Don't get me wrong, but I think you're probably number 4 in making everything happen the way that it has to happen. Mm-hmm. If we don't have educators, if our kids aren't learning their, reading, writing, arithmetic, and the basic fundamentals of how to be a good human and how to be a good citizen, gosh, what is our city if we don't have
Amen.
those people standing in the gap, teaching our young people
That's
right. how to do life? Yeah. And I can say from my perspective that, we've been so blessed and fortunate with Mrs. Albright in kindergarten and Mrs. Mitchell in first grade and now Mrs. Wildeman in second grade. It's a partnership between the parents and the teachers. You want to have me sit on top of a soapbox real quick. The parents that take an adversarial approach to the teachers and try to point fingers at teachers about stuff that should be happening in the home. And it's like, if there's not a partnership between the parental units and the teacher at school, well, gosh, man. I'm pointing my finger more at the parental units than the teacher. The teacher's responsible for somewhere around 20 kids, plus or minus. I don't know what the average class size is, but I would imagine it's
elementary
somewhere
is
around 20
yeah.
for elementary. 20 kids and one teacher. And, Fred, with all due respect, I would be an absolutely terrible elementary teacher. I would be the world's worst. Because I would get fired so fast because about 2 or 3 weeks into the school year, my patience would be exhausted, and I would say something unkind to a kid who would complain to their mom, who complained to the principal, and then I'd be fired. Because I'm just not wired to be an elementary educator.
Right.
God bless them. I love them. I'm so glad that they're there and that I don't have to do that. Because if the success of McKinney were dependent on James being a good elementary school teacher, we're all screwed. I'm sorry.
Well, I tell you what, a little secret is when I'm having a rough day or a rough week, I always go to an elementary school and I go visit the teachers and I see the kids. Because elementary teachers are just special. They're happy people. They love their little ones, and I always walk out of an elementary school just a little rejuvenated. My cup's a little more full, and with a different perspective of what and why I'm doing what I'm doing. So, but you're so right. Partnership is huge. All the data shows that when it's a partnership and the parent is involved and trying to partnership with their students' education, that student's going to be more successful academically, less discipline, all the levers that make a kid successful in school. When there's that partnership, it makes it roll.
That's right. But that's not to say that middle school and high school teachers aren't worth their salt also. Because
Oh, yeah,
they are
no.
amazing, you know. And I
No.
just want to give a shout out to Travis Treadwell, band
Yeah,
director.
oh yeah, Travis.
And,
Yeah,
you
saw him
know,
this morning.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
Well, you know, you can tell him that he broke my heart because, you know, he left McKinney ISD and was my son's band director for a year, and what he did was absolutely amazing. But then, because the MISD is all that and a bag of chips, he left the Frisco ISD and came back.
That's
He
right.
came back.
That's right.
And, you know, yes, those elementary school teachers, I have absolutely the utmost respect for them, because the ability to take 20 kids, break them up into centers or groups, and they're all running, and the teacher, you know, yeah, I'm not cut from that cloth either. But watching band directors and their ability with all of that, and then just, you know.
With apologies to Frisco Independence High School.
That's right. Okay, so for those of you who tuned in, that is James Jenkins. That is James Jenkins with that one.
But you
but
know,
yes,
those,
you know,
those
and
people don't realize the band directors, and I didn't realize it until I got into the McKinney North High School as a campus coordinator and more in an administrative role too, and dealing with and those band directors are no different than the football coach in terms of preparation and things they do for kids, and the amount of times the amount of time kids put into that work. It's just, and it's like any extracurricular, right? It's their passion, and they are learning so many life skills in there with what they're putting into their passion and learning the process of how to be successful. And we've got 3 great band directors that all just do a great job of pouring into kids and having quality programs. Yeah.
Now, unfortunately, it's my responsibility to have a little bit more of a serious question. I'm glad we had the high note talking about the elementary school. I'm going to play some foreboding music here because I intend to poke fun at some of these people because of their ridiculous behavior. Let me just bring this up so we can hear it. Some folks in our community really enjoy slinging mud and stirring the pot and creating controversy, perhaps out of thin air where it didn't exist in the first place, or taking something that perhaps is a little bit of a legitimate controversy and exacerbating it, blowing it way out of proportion, creating a villainous narrative, whether it's sexualized books in libraries or it's, you know, gender identity and usage of opposite birth gender locker rooms, which was the most recent one. How do we as a city, as a community, how do we create the dialogue, a place to have these conversations, usually a school board meeting, without giving in to the insanity, you said it earlier, the ridiculous politicalization of local public education, which I'm a firm believer, the R and the D have no part in local politics. It doesn't belong at all. Nobody's talking about a same-sex marriage or abortion or any of these big-time hot-button issues at the federal level. Very important issues, not at the local level. Nobody in city council runs with an R or a D next to their name. Political party doesn't really exist there. So many people want to inject it into the local process, though, for city council, for school board. How in the world do we promote constructive dialogue while making it very clear to certain people, knock it off? Like, come on. Right. Does that help students learn better? Does that increase teacher satisfaction and average tenure? Does it make it easier for our campus administrators to do their job effectively? Would you just shut up? Like, I know you can't say that, but I can. Like, you self-promoting, self-aggrandizing, personal agenda buffoon, shut your mouth. And if you want to run for school board, do you want to be a part of the constructive process? No? Okay, then go away. How do we have a constructive... Sorry, I'm all the way on my soapbox here, and I know George and I had this conversation, had some same conversation with other people. It's like, what on earth what is your agenda? What are you trying to accomplish? Because no one in the school district, no teacher, no administrator, no student benefits from this kind of nonsense. You, as the leader of the organization, obviously you have to be polite and constructive, and you can't say what I just said, but I'm a podcast host and I'm a private citizen. At some point, I may hold elected office. The good people of McKinney decide on that years down the road. Lord knows I ain't running for anything for several years. But how in the world do we have constructive dialogue while suppressing people that are just intentionally inflammatory?
Yeah, it's a challenge. And, I think our philosophy has been to be transparent, but also at times correct the commentary. And, that next day, in foolishness on myself, I guess, I did not anticipate social media going viral. And so felt like, I pulled our group together and I said, look, we got to respond. We got to correct the commentary here because we're not allowing boys and girls locker rooms. Never have, never will. And so we've got to correct this commentary. So we sat down and tried to put a communication out and get it out as quick as we could. But I think, we do have to correct the commentary. It is difficult. Sometimes you're like, right now they've been coming for months saying that we have 6 active gangs at Scott Johnson Middle School, and that I was informed by McKinney PD, and I've just done nothing about it but sweep it under the rug. And like the first time I heard it, and so that night I called the chief and said, hey, is there something I don't know about?
Yeah.
And he's like, never heard. I'll call you in the morning. I'll just check up on it. Our people are unaware of any of that. And I drove to Scott Johnson Middle School the next morning, grabbed the SRO, the student resource officer, and said, hey, is there something going on that I don't know about? I have no idea. He's like, there's 0 gang activity in the school. And so you get these things and you decide what effects it having on the community. There are people wondering, and if so, we try to correct the commentary. If it's just
Shawn, I don't mean to interrupt you here.
Sure.
Do you mean to tell me that people are fabricating stories out of thin air? Are people just? I am aghast and appalled. I cannot believe that people would do that. You mean to tell me that the McKinney Police Department and Chief Ellenberg are happy to say we're not aware of any such things happening, that the SRO at the campus, who is responsible for making sure that such things don't happen, is confirming, no, those things aren't happening, but people are still going to show up to the school board during the public comment part of the meeting and simply propagate completely fabricated, made-up stories for their own kicks and giggles? Say it ain't so. Say it ain't so, Shawn.
I will just emphasize that, and every accusation that's made, I take none of them for granted.
Yeah.
And I do my homework and make sure whether I don't go off this. Boy, by golly, I don't believe that's to be true. I go and I physically make sure that I follow up on it just to be safe. But yeah, I mean, it's teachers and educators, we have and we even say this, the next kid in the door, right? And that's why our vision is every student every day. The next kid in the door, we're not going to say, well, hey, are you guys Republicans or Democrats? And, what's your socioeconomic status or, where were you born? None of those things matter to educators. Yeah. We signed up to educate every kid every day. And so the next kid through the door, we're going to educate them. And the next kid through the door, we have no idea what they're bringing with them in terms of all of the things. But we're going to educate them, and we're going to care about them. And we're going to treat them good and try to meet all their needs. And today, and our district does a great job. It's not just their education needs, because sometimes their basic needs, food, clothing, those kind of things have to be addressed before we can educate them. A kid that's hungry,
that's right, can't learn.
That's right. And so that's an educator's mindset. And unfortunately, those other things have been pulled down. And I tell our teachers and our administrators all the time, hey, you got to compartmentalize that stuff. Don't stay focused on it, because all it does is pull us away from doing the work that we signed up to do, right? And that's me personally too. I can very easily be drug into that muck and not be doing what I need to be doing to help administrators and teachers help kids.
Yep.
So it's a challenge for sure.
Well, that's what I tell you. When it comes to social media and keeping that, because obviously that social media not only is the means for communication, but it's also the social currency.
Yes, sir.
Right. And so for specifically for middle school things, apparently, you need to point out things that are cap, and lessen the things that are skibbity, and then definitely the people who are promoting these nonsense rumors, tell them they're delulu, right? Isn't that some of the terms, some of those things. But all of that aside, just looking over your ongoing tenure and legacy of being in the classroom and in the admin position, what would you say are some of your highlights, your moments? Not that you're standing up there saying, waving your banner saying, look how awesome I am, but what gives you that sense of pride and accomplishment for what you have done?
I think number one, and this would, I think, be any educator's answer. So really, because I'm not going to talk about anybody specific, but I think any educator sitting here would say my number one are all those individual stories of kids you had that had struggles, right? And you helped, counseled them, loved them, mentored them, and all those things through a situation, and they were able to get through it. And you were a little part of helping them get through it. I think any educator would say that's first. I mean, it's my ex-students or players that are still in contact with me, and I know they're doing good, and I know I had a little part of that. Those are special relationships, and that's always, that's what fills an educator. So I think that's number one. I do have a great pride in that. I know I'm going to retire my whole career being in McKinney ISD, and just, again, we talked about, I love the school district. I love the people. And so that's special to me. Those things. Opening up McKinney North was special because it was second high school here. Our administration really didn't know how to open a second high school, and they stuck me and the principal over there for 6 months trying to get the school ready. And felt like we were over there on an island a bunch of the time. And at the time, you didn't realize it, but you look back and wow, you talk about growing during a period of time. Dealing with all the things you got to open as a high school, but I think the biggest thing is those individual stories, which I could sit here for the next 3 hours and talk about this kid and that kid.
I'm sure.
Yeah,
I think it'd be cool if we could get if we could just get kids in here one day just to tell stories about that teacher that made a difference in the ISD.
Yeah.
I love that, man. Or maybe just have a like a Zoom call or something and let people know, hey, we're going to have a big old party. Hop on for 5 or 10 minutes and tell us who you are, where you're from, and share your story, and then hop off. And have a little open office hours kind of thing.
And that's one of the cool things about this job is I go around the city and go to different things. People come up to me all the time and say, hey, Miss Smith, I had her in this age, and she did this for me, and just tell you all the cool stories. That's a great part of this job.
Yeah, because for sure, we know that bad news gets out there. It makes it twice around the block before good news even gets out of bed. So I think that would be awesome to have. But James, I think we're getting close to our time here.
Yeah.
So we have a lightning round. It's just one or the other. All right. So my first off is cornbread. Should it be sweet or not sweet?
Man, I like them both, but sweet.
Okay. Sweet. Okay.
And I put it in milk late at night after there's a little left over. I put honey on it when I eat it, typically, depending on what I'm eating. But I always finish off that night with it in some milk. My granddad taught me that a long time
ago. All right.
ago.
And the best part of the crumbs at the bottom of the glass, right?
That's right.
All right. So now here's the really tough one. Taylor Swift, George Strait.
Oh, George Strait.
Oh, come on, man. You hear this man's voice, you know what he's going to pick there. Now, I think I know the answer to this question. Chili, beans, or no beans?
I actually put beans in my chili.
Oh,
me too.
That's right. But there are the meat only people.
Yep.
Yeah.
They will fight you tooth and nail.
I know.
Never.
But I do put beans. I love cooking chili, and I do put beans. Venison and beans.
All right. So now the really tough one. Friday Night Lights, Varsity Blues.
Friday Night Lights.
There we go.
I'm agree with him on that one, Coach.
Yeah.
There you go.
All right, James.
Okay, so our last question is one we ask everybody. If you've heard any of our episodes, you already know what I'm about to ask you here. Who would win in a fight between a great white shark and a giant polar bear in a pool 6 feet deep with no edges? It's an infinitely sized pool. It goes on forever, but it's only 6 feet deep. Who wins, polar bear or shark?
6 foot of water.
6 foot of water.
6 foot of water. I'm going to go with the shark.
Okay.
Yeah.
Walk me through that. How do you make that choice?
Well, I think being in the water, the sharks got the advantage because that's their habitat, right?
Yep.
And great white sharks are just,
Yeah, it's a beast.
man, they're just,
There you go.
yeah.
Team shark.
I grew up watching the movie Jaws, right? So
Oh,
it's
yeah.
just instilled in me. Those sharks are.
Man, now, let me just end this episode with saying that I know I speak for Shawn and the school board and everybody else when I say the voice of the people is so important. And if you want to, have your say in the process, you are always welcome to attend a school board meeting, hear from Shawn and the school board, which are elected officials in our city. There's a public comment period in every school board. I think almost every school board. There's
There
some
is.
executive sessions and whatnot that aren't
But we always have an open forum.
yeah.
Yeah.
So every meeting, you are welcome to come attend and have your voice be heard. If you want to ask questions or raise comments or whatever, it is an open forum that every citizen of McKinney is welcome to attend, even those that may not be jurisdiction for McKinney ISD. You might have a McKinney address, but I know Shawn welcomes that input. If there's anything that you want to add to the conversation, the contact information for everything is in the show notes here in the episode, and if you're watching on YouTube, it's in the description below. Shawn, this has been a wonderful episode. I want to
Thanks
thank
for
you for
having
your
me.
valuable time, sir. And he is Superintendent Shawn Pratt, and this has been another episode of the McKinney Podcast, helping us celebrate totally botched that. Celebrating what makes us unique by nature. Make it a great day, ladies and gentlemen. We'll see you next time.